Hey guys, tonight we slip behind the curtain of myth and munch our way through a very sleepy slice of ancient imagination. You're backstage, but not just any backstage. This is the sacred wine-splashed chaos behind a Dionysian festival somewhere in 5th century BCE Athens. The torches flicker, musicians are tuning stringed instruments no one remembers how to restring, and somewhere nearby a man in a donkey mask is loudly forgetting his lines. But you're here for something far less dramatic. You're standing beside Dionysus. Yes, that Dionysus while he glares at a platter of soggy olives and clearly regrettable barley paste. He sighs deeply, slumps into a leopard skin beanbag, and mutters something about these people having the audacity to call this provisions. You probably won't survive this, not because of any heroic quest or fire-breathing monster, but because Dionysus, god of revelry, is about to go on an artisan snack rampage, and you unfortunately have just been made his mortal sous chef. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also tell me where you're tuning in from and what time it is there. I love seeing the sleepy corners of the world gathering here. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The scene begins with a silence, only broken by the crunch of a stale olive pit. Dionysus, sprawled across silk cushions embroidered with tiny dancing satyrs, stares at his feast/offering. This, he sniffs, isn't food. This is punishment with garnish. You hover awkwardly, trying not to stare at the statue of yourself, someone carved in appreciation for volunteering. You hadn't, you just stumbled into the wrong tent. The problem, according to the god of wine, is that mortals have entirely missed the point of performance food. How do they expect to feel divine ecstasy, he muses, picking at a vine leaf if their mouths are full of dry lentil paste and flat beer? Historically speaking, festival foods were, let's say, rustic. Ancient Greek theater goers mostly brought their own food, leftovers wrapped in fig leaves, or the occasional lump of salted cheese wrapped in wool, yes, wool. Amphorae of wine were common too, and not always diluted, which probably explains the heckling. You try to suggest that maybe it's the performance people are focused on, not the food. Dionysus gives you a look that could curdle fresh goat's milk. No, he says, rising with the dramatic flair of someone who's half wine at all times. If the stomach is bored, the soul is bored. That's basic mysticism. And so begins the snack quest. Outside the tent, the festival thunders on. Horns blare, dancers whirl, and an old man dressed as Poseidon is arguing with a puppet. You dodge a thyrsus, the pinecone staff thing, don't worry. It's mostly symbolic, and trail Dionysus into the central agora. There, under striped awnings and clouds of roasted fish smoke, mortal vendors hawk their best honey cakes, boiled lupins, and those fig rolls that somehow taste like sandalwood. Dionysus is unimpressed. He samples one thing and immediately spits it into an amphora labeled donations. Where is the flair, he demands? Where is the sensual contrast of texture, the salty sweet tang of delight? One vendor offers up roasted chickpeas with fennel. Dionysus politely throws them at a statue of Hera. Here's where things get weird, well weirder. Historians still argue whether Dionysian feasts truly feature divine innovation in food, or if all the Epicurean flair came later, romanticized by bored poets and modern foodies desperate to turn ancient myth into a tasting menu. But you're here, and Dionysus is muttering to himself about gorging on ambrosia as a child and how nothing's ever been the same since. A goat wanders by, sniffs your foot, and moves on. Let's make our own, the god finally says. From scratch. None of this seasonal drizzle of garum reduction nonsense. And just like that, you're dragged off to repurpose a nearby actor's dressing tent into what he calls a proto-kitchen. You watch helplessly as he starts boiling grape must in a ceremonial chalice and asks if you know how to peel olives with flair. Outside, the festival roars, but inside, you've just become a culinary assistant to a wine god on a mission to reinvent the theater snack and possibly ruin several centuries of culinary history. You stand in what was mere minutes ago a dressing tent, now transformed into what Dionysus dramatically refers to as the sacred snackorium. Silk robes have been draped across wooden crates to form makeshift counters. Someone's left a laurel crown in a mixing bowl. A goat keeps wandering in and being gently pushed out. Dionysus stands at the center of this chaos, arms raised like a conductor before an orchestra. "Let the alchemy begin," he bellows. Then he promptly frowns at a clay jar of capers and hurls it at the wall. Too briny. It's going to be a long day. He begins by listing what he calls the mortal offenses of snack culture. Dry barley cakes that taste like regret honey, that's either too sweet or not smug enough, and figs, which he swears are nature's way of saying you tried. You try to keep a straight face while peeling grapes under his watchful eye. He comments on your technique. It is apparently acceptable for a human. In truth, some of the snacks weren't that bad. Historical records show the Greeks had quite a diverse culinary scene. They mixed dried fruits with nuts, roasted chickpeas, and used fig paste in nearly everything. But to Dionysus, this was all rustic mediocrity. He wanted flair, he wanted spectacle. He wanted intermission food that caused gasps of delight followed by mild confusion. "Let us consult a master," he says suddenly, and you flinch because gods don't usually say things like that before anything comforting. A horn blasts outside. Dionysus storms out, dragging you along, grape juice staining the hem of his robe. You arrive at a golden pavilion shaped like a donkey's head, which in hindsight should have been your warning. "Behold," Dionysus announces King Midas. Midas is reclining on a bench that looks suspiciously like a bedazzled cheeseboard. He greets you with a distracted wave and a mouthful of something that crunches unpleasantly. "Oh, good," he mumbles. Someone finally appreciates the finer flavors of gold-dusted chickpeas. He pats the bench and a puff of what might be powdered sugar or powdered regret floats into the air. Dionysus dives straight into complaints. "Midas," he says, pacing, "why is it so hard to find one decent snack worthy of divine performance?" Midas shrugs and offers you a small biscuit covered in what is unmistakably edible gold leaf. It tastes like a rich man's envelope. You chew politely. "Have you tried dipping dates in bronze?" he asks, dead serious. "Wouldn't that kill people, you ask?" Midas blinks. "Only the impure." Dionysus looks at you with the exhausted gaze of a theater kid forced to rehearse with a non-union cast. This, he sighs, was a mistake. He turns to leave, but Midas grabs his arm and insists on presenting a proper appetizer flight. What follows is a deeply concerning parade of metallic hors d'oeuvres, candied walnuts rolled in silver flakes, goat cheese frozen on a slab of copper, and something that might have been honey, but was far too sparkly to be trusted. Historians still argue. Dionysus mutters to you whether this man was a tragic figure or just had bad taste. To be fair, Midas was a real king, likely of Phrygia, and his association with gold probably comes from river sediments near his supposed capital, but it's also entirely possible he just really liked glittery food. You finally escape after Dionysus fakes a call from Hera and backs away slowly, thanking Midas for his deeply illuminating contributions. You don't make eye contact with the silver-dipped olives on your way out. Back at the snackorium, Dionysus flops dramatically onto a cushion and groans. "We're doomed, condemned to a world of crunchy lentils and shame." You pat his shoulder. "Maybe we just need fresh input." He lifts an eyebrow. "You mean mortals?" You nod, or at least semi-mortals, preferably ones who aren't gilding legumes. Enter Silenus. The old satyr stumbles in with a wineskin under one arm and a cracked amphora in the other. He looks like he's been awake for 5 decades straight and smells like fermented thyme. "Heard there was a snack crisis," he slurs cheerfully. Dionysus grimaces. "Oh good, the philosopher of pickled things has arrived." Silenus drops into a seat, takes a long drink from something steaming, and begins to critique the state of culinary affairs. "What you need," he wheezes, "is goat cheese aged in moss. Real moss. From a north-facing cave. With cave bats." You blink. "Ad stang," he says with the solemnity of a man who once tried fermenting olives in a fish bladder. Dionysus looks intrigued. He produces a slate and starts scribbling furiously. Moss. tang, cave bad optional. You try to suggest that maybe human palates aren't ready for cave-aged cheese with notes of despair, but Silenus waves you off. Mortals love a good story. Sell them mystery cheese with a name like the Whispering Feta, and they'll eat it by the handful. He's not wrong. In the modern world, someone probably would sell that on Etsy. The night stretches on the tent, growing warmer with the glow of a few scattered torches. Outside the festival rolls forward laughter echoing of stone and silk, sandals slapping across flagstones, lyres twanging in a minor key that sounds suspiciously like someone gave up halfway through tuning. Inside, though, the true drama simmers gently in pots of honeyed olive oil and boiling lotus root. Dionysus leans over a bowl of something purple and steaming. "We're getting close," he whispers, eyes alight. "And you poor soul are somehow still here, now covered in fig syrup and holding a basket of pine nuts that may or may not be cursed." The torches flicker lower now, casting a soft amber haze across the snacorium. Somewhere in the distance, a flute solo spirals off-key before crashing into applause. Inside, your job has evolved from mortal helper to experimental food tester with no hazard pay. Dionysus, sleeves rolled and eyes gleaming, declares it's time to truly canvass the mortal palate. "We shall embark," he proclaims, "on a journey of taste. A pilgrimage through starch and sugar. You're not sure if you're supposed to clap, but you do weakly, while chewing something that might be sweetened onion skin. The god leads you through the agora's labyrinth of vendor stalls, each one glowing like a lantern in the dusk. Clay lamps dangle from ropes, illuminating heaps of fruits, herbs, and mystery powders. Festival goers sway with the music, noses red from undiluted wine, and sandals sticky from spilled honey cakes. Your first stop is a fig vendor proud of his salted fig rolls baked with myrrh. Dionysus pops one in his mouth and instantly spits it back into the man's apron. "This tastes like a dried secret," he says flatly. The vendor shrugs and offers you one. You chew it politely, wondering if you can still taste joy. Historians tell us that the agora in Athens was not just a market, it was a carnival of philosophy, gossip, and goat cheese. But tonight, under Dionysus's manic energy, it feels like a chaotic tasting tour with zero breaks and no water. You move on to a woman selling lentil fritters. Dionysus eats two and nods solemnly. "Better," he says, but still lacks whimsy. She rolls her eyes and offers him vinegar-soaked pomegranate seeds. He chokes. "Now it tastes like heartbreak," he wheezes. And so it goes. Chickpeas, toasted with cumin, too crunchy sesame paste wrapped in vine leaves, too moody and stale, barley biscuits that seem to echo with the sadness of Athenian tax collectors. You pass a spice cart where cinnamon, cardamom, and dried orange peel are piled like treasure. Dionysus perks up. Finally, some potential. He sniffs a jar of crushed rose petals, sneezes, and knocks over a vat of fermented goat yogurt. No one seems to notice. Next is a stall run by a weathered man with wild hair and one eyebrow. He offers Dionysus a fusion cake of olive paste, wild mint, and ground almonds. Dionysus bites into it and freezes. You wait. He swallows slowly. "What in Hades' name is this?" Experimental, the vendor says, clearly proud. "It tastes like a philosopher's sandal." I get that a lot. Despite the failure, you pocket a piece for later. You've long stopped trusting Dionysus's palate. At this point, you take food advice from the goat. You stop by a fishmonger next, who offers dried anchovies coated in honey. "You can't be serious," Dionysus mutters. "People like contrast," the fishmonger insists. "Sweet and salty. It's modern." Historians still argue. Dionysus mutters to you whether this city is ahead of its time or deeply confused. You try a bite. It tastes like betrayal at sea. There's a brief glimmer of hope at a fruit stall. A young girl offers sun-dried apples soaked in red wine and cloves. Dionysus chews thoughtfully, then nods. This, he says with his mouth full, is intriguing. You both eat too many and walk crookedly for a while. Soon you come upon a booth with small cakes arranged in geometric patterns. The baker explains they're made with spelt flour, honey, and goat's milk baked over a clay fire and sprinkled with thyme ash. Dionysus is skeptical but intrigued. "This one looks like a tragic mask," he says, biting into it. He chews, swallows, and for once does not complain. You try it too. It's oddly soft, a little smoky sweet on the back end. Not life-changing, but cozy, familiar. This, he says, eyes wide, could be something. You spend the next 30 minutes interrogating the baker on technique. Dionysus takes notes using a quill dipped in spiced syrup. The baker, somewhat alarmed, eventually gives you a satchel of ingredients and a pat on the back that implies, "Please leave now." As you wander away, Dionysus clutches the satchel like sacred scripture. "We're close," he says. "So close. The perfect snack is almost real." You wonder if you've ever seen a deity this excited. Then again, you've also never seen one eat 3 honey cakes in a row while shouting, "I am the god of texture." The moon is high now. Festival lights blur into stars. You're sticky, tired, and unsure if your taste buds still function. And yet, you kind of want to see what happens next. Dawn hasn't broken yet, but the festival is beginning to quiet. Somewhere behind you, a lyre player collapses into a basket of grapes. The torch smoke curls lazily now, the scents of ash and honey lingering in the air. Dionysus, however, is wired. Like a theater kid, 3 espressos deep with no concept of bedtime. "We need a second opinion," he declares, wiping fig paste off his hands with a tapestry that definitely belonged in a temple. You groan. "From who?" He grins. "From someone who has nothing to lose." He drags you truly bodily into a pine grove at the edge of the festival where the drums grow distant and the night gets that soft, bluish quiet of just before sunrise. There's a clearing, and in it a satyr doing headstands for no reason, 2 maenads arguing about the meaning of raisins, and Silenus snoring into a wine jug like it's an emotional support animal. And then there's Pan. Yes, that Pan. The god of wild things, part goat, part mischief, full-time chaos agent. He's barefoot, shirtless, and apparently hosting a campfire cook-off among woodland creatures. The rules are unclear. One squirrel appears to be judging. Dionysus claps him on the back. "Pan, we need your culinary wisdom." Pan looks up from turning something in a leaf over the fire. "Is this about the cheese incident?" "Worse," you sigh. "It's about snacks." Pan's eyes gleam. "Say no more." Historians still argue whether Pan was worshipped more as a trickster or a rustic guardian. You're starting to think he was mostly just the guy you didn't want planning your potluck. He leaps up, rustles around in a basket of ingredients, red, unwashed roots and half-melted bee comb, and pulls out what he claims is a sacred nut. You don't ask questions, you've learned not to. Tonight he announces we shall invent the pop. Dionysus blinks. "The what?" The pop pan declares, hurling a handful of dried grain into a clay pot nestled in the fire. It's a culinary revelation waiting to burst into being. You try to explain that most grains don't pop unless they're dried pressurized, and Pan shushes you. "No logic in food," he says, "only legend." The pot begins to hiss. Smoke curls up in weird spiraling shapes. You inch back. Dionysus leans in, eyes wild. Then pop. One single grain leaps out like a startled frog. Everyone cheers. A raccoon claps. Pan scoops out a handful of charred kernels and dumps honey over them. "Try it," he urges. You do. It's not bad. Crunchy, smoky, a little sweet. Like burnt toast met caramel in a dark alley and became friends. Dionysus chews thoughtfully. It's missing something. Dignity, you suggest. He glares. So Pan doubles down, adding a dollop of fermented fig paste and a drizzle of goat milk. The next batch bubbles violently. One kernel lands on a nearby turtle. It doesn't react. You all eat in silence for a while. Even Silenus wakes up to try a bite, then promptly falls asleep chewing. You're about to suggest maybe this wasn't the most efficient use of time when Dionysus sighs contentedly. You know, this has character. It's chaotic, unrefined, dangerous. Just like theater. Pan nods. You look at both of them licking sticky fingers, eyes shining in the firelight like over-caffeinated playwrights. "Oh no," you mutter. They're inspired. You trudge back to the snacorium as the first hints of dawn bleach the sky pale. Dionysus carries a basket of charred pop grains like he's cradling a newborn. Pan follows behind, humming a tune that sounds suspiciously like a donkey snoring. Back at your makeshift tent kitchen, the god of wine gets to work. He's mixing roasted chickpeas with honeyed grape skins, adding in lotus seeds from the sacred pond, after blessing them naturally and stirring in a cautious amount of whatever Pan made. You meanwhile are in charge of plating, on fig leaves of course, with olive oil dots arranged in the shape of a tragic mask. Because it's theater, everything's a metaphor. This time Dionysus doesn't spit anything out. He nods. Still not perfect, he says, but getting close. You collapse onto a pile of pillows. One of them is humming. You ignore it. And as Dionysus begins arranging the next batch, now mumbling about texture and mouthfeel, you find yourself actually, despite everything, starting to enjoy this. Even if it means spending the rest of your night elbow deep in fermented fig foam. You've officially been awake too long. The sky outside is taking on that oddly specific grayish-pink tone that makes everything look vaguely like it's made of goat cheese. Your back hurts, your hands smell like grape must and pine sap, and Dionysus is now humming a sea shanty while zesting pomegranate over a bowl of what looks suspiciously like fried lily roots. You mutter, "This can't be normal." He grins. "What is? Welcome to the Bacchic Bake-Off." Word has gotten out, whether via Divine Gossip Satyr Network or some tragically efficient Maenad messenger service, that Dionysus is testing snacks. And like amphorae rolling downhill, the competitors arrive in waves. The first group is a trio of nymphs, all limbs and sass, balancing trays of delicately rolled vine leaf pastries. One insists hers is infused with spring morning dew. Another claims her filling was sung to by sirens. The third just winks and says it's vegan. Dionysus tastes each with exaggerated seriousness, swirling one around in his mouth like a sommelier, then declaring the texture ethereal but the mouthfeel existentially unfulfilling. You meanwhile are appointed assistant judge. Your scoring criteria: joy to crunch ratio and emotional resonance. No pressure. Next up is a centaur who apparently left his job at a philosophy school to pursue pastry. He presents oat-stuffed figs soaked in mead and wrapped in thyme-smoked cheesecloth. They're surprisingly good, until Dionysus bites into a small pebble hidden inside and almost loses a divine molar. Authenticity. The centaur shrugs. You move on. A mortal cook arrives with a cart of tiny clay bowls, each holding a different dip: honey garlic paste, roasted onion jam, spicy olive tapenade. For barley flatbread, she says proudly, handing you a warm disc of it. Dionysus tears off a piece, dips it in the tapenade and goes quiet. Very quiet. You panic. Is this divine silence? Is that thunder? Nope, he's just chewing slowly with a smile. This, he says, finally, this is promising. The crowd murmurs. A squirrel faints. Now a group of traveling merchants presents fusion cuisine featuring dates stuffed with candied anchovies. You don't want to eat it, you do. It tastes like betrayal in two textures. Dionysus chews one's pauses and says interesting, which is worse than disgusting because now they think he likes it. There's even a duo of temple scribes who offer cerebral snacks cookies baked in the shapes of the muses. They're oddly chewy. Terpsichore tastes like old leather. You politely chew calliope. Historians still argue Dionysus mutters whether mortals ever truly understood metaphor or baking temperatures. But amid the chaos, something begins to happen. Ideas swirl. Combinations emerge. The chaos births possibility. You try a fried sesame ball filled with fig paste and goat cheese and think this could work. Dionysus tastes a cake made of almond meal, pine nuts, and wildflower honey and says we're close. It needs bite. It needs contrast. It needs... Crispy, you offer. He spins to face you, eyes wide. Yes, and fluffy, but grounded and aromatic, yet unpredictable. You nod slowly. So, a paradox. He snaps. Exactly. Somewhere a nymph starts sobbing with culinary joy. Outside the tent, the bake-off crowd swells. A pair of Spartans argue about the ethics of flavor. A Corinthian merchant tries to bribe you for the winning recipe. The raccoon from before is back and clearly here for samples. Then Silenus returns shirtless and singing and places before you what he calls the snack of unity. It's a cube. It jiggles. Dionysus pokes it. It purrs. You refuse to eat it. And yet somehow it doesn't win worst dish of the day. That honor goes to a bold young sculptor who mistook salt for sugar and tried to bake with actual marble dust. His cookies break a tray. Eventually, the judging ends. Dionysus slouches in his seat, half asleep and covered in sticky notes and fig glaze. He sighs. So much potential, so much disappointment. You nod. Like democracy. He chuckles. Exactly. Still, the spark hasn't left his eyes. He's closer. The perfect theater snack is out there. It's waiting. Just a few figs and wild ideas away. He rises again. We're not done. You groan. The god points skyward. We go international. You were promised a snack, not an odyssey. And yet, before your barley bread has even settled, you're swept into a glittering wine-slick portal of swirls and stars shoulder to shoulder with Dionysus, who insists it's definitely time for global inspiration. Domestic flavors can only carry us so far, he says, his breath warm with honeyed fig and existential purpose. We must travel, broaden the palate, ignite the senses. You attempt to protest, but your words are swallowed by a sudden gust of spice-scented wind, and the stars rearrange into hieroglyphs. Moments or possibly centuries later, you land with a soft plop on hot-packed sand. You're in Egypt, specifically in Thebes, during some celebratory week involving multiple deities, incense-thick air, and enough linen to dress an entire amphitheater cast. Around you, vendors bark in overlapping rhythms, and trays of sweets glisten in the desert sun like small edible obelisks. Dionysus adjusts his grapevine crown, now slightly melted. Right, he says, clapping his hands. Let's see what they've got. Egyptians, it turns out, take snacking seriously. You're immediately handed something small, sticky, and spherical. It smells like dates and smuggled joy. Dionysus eats 4 before remembering to ask what they are. Date paste balls, the vendor explains, rolled in crushed pistachio and sesame. You both freeze. Then look at each other. This, Dionysus whispers, has potential. And suddenly the note scroll is out, dripping with inspiration. Sticky, nutty, compact, celebratory. You're dragged from stall to stall like a divine shopping cart. You try honey-drizzled tiger nut cake, sweet fibrous, mildly confusing semolina cookies, perfumed with rose water, crumbling perfection, and lotus seed puffs that dissolve like ancient whispers. You learn that tiger nuts are not in fact tiger-related. You're relieved. A baker invites you behind her stall to witness a sacred recipe, a blend of honey flour and palm wine rolled into thin wafers and baked on clay domes. The smell is hypnotic. The texture, flaky and chewy, elicits an honest to Olympus sigh from Dionysus. Historians still argue, he says, between bites whether the Egyptians worshipped food or food simply demanded it. He's not wrong. Even in-tomb snacks were included for the afterlife. Imagine having your eternal reward be 2 slices of semolina loaf and 1 jar of honey. Better than ambrosia depending on your taste. Back at the market, you sample fruit compotes chilled in river-cooled pots and hear tales of royal chefs flavoring meals with frankincense and saffron. Everything is a ceremony here, Dionysus murmurs, even dessert. Then comes the sesame. A humble-looking bar made of crushed sesame honey, and a hint of salt is offered by an old woman with a voice like sandpaper dipped in kindness. She calls it simsimia. Dionysus takes a bite, goes silent, and stares into the horizon like he's just solved time. You chew yours slowly. Crunchy, warm, sweet, salty, fragrant, resilient, elegant. It is, dare you admit, the best thing you've tasted all night. Dionysus leans on your shoulder, whispering, it's got crunch, it's got soul, it's got portability. You nod solemnly. And so, the great Egyptian sesame bar is packed away in the sacred satchel of snack notes. You're pretty sure it used to be a wine sack, but who's judging? With spice markets fading behind you and your arms full of wrapped treats, Dionysus lifts his hand once more. We're not done, he says. Let's steal some date jam and head to the archives. Before you can ask, he drags you toward the temple library. There, amid reed scrolls and careful silence, you unroll ancient recipe tablets with one goal: inspiration. You find mentions of honey cakes offered to Bastet, ceremonial beer bread with crushed coriander, and something suspiciously close to a modern energy bar, fig nut and bean paste mixed with flour and pressed into slabs for soldiers. You show it to Dionysus. He nods. Warrior food, performance food, same thing. He adds it to the list. The librarian glares. You mouth sorry. Back outside, the sun begins to set again, or perhaps rise. Time is mushy around gods and the air is cooler. Dionysus holds up a sesame bar like a torch. We go home, he says, and we test. You close your eyes, holding the Egyptian air in your lungs just a moment longer. And then whoosh, back to the tent, back to the bake-off remains, back to the fig syrup and chaos. But now you have ingredients. You arrive back in the snackorium like a slightly overcooked pita, warm dazed and trailing a faint aroma of toasted sesame. The tent looks smaller now, crowded with empty amphorae, forgotten platters, and one passed-out satyr using a melon as a pillow. Dionysus wastes no time. We must synthesize, he announces, dumping the contents of the sacred satchel of snack notes onto a tray. Dried lotus semolina dust, crushed pistachio, and a dangerously sticky block of Egyptian sesame bar tumble out like a divine snack avalanche. Your job procurement and prepping according to Dionysus. So you begin the great task of sifting ingredients. Some of it's manageable date paste nuts, even the elusive tiger nuts. But then he hands you a jug labeled lotus syrup. It's unlabeled because it whispers when you hold it. You set that one aside. Dionysus is in full experiment mode, muttering things like viscosity equals virtue and no snack should crumble before the dramatic monologue. He's boiling, mixing, stirring, occasionally shouting words like contrast and mouth theater while wearing a toga backwards. Selinus stumbles in at some point, nods solemnly at the chaos and exits, carrying a bowl of what you hope was not uncooked barley. I've seen this look before, you mutter, scooping honey into a clay bowl. Final rehearsal panic. Dionysus doesn't hear you. He's carefully dusting a fig cake with what might be powdered myrrh. The first combination is a disaster. Fried chickpeas wrapped in lotus petals explode in the oil. The goat panics. The tent now smells like a haunted perfumery. Too floral, Dionysus coughs, waving away smoke. Next attempt, pistachio date paste layered between two slabs of barley cracker lightly brushed with honey and sprinkled with crushed sesame. Promising, he says, chewing slowly. You agree, it's crunchy, earthy, slightly sweet, but something's missing. Texture harmony, you offer. He nods, writing the phrase on the back of a U scroll with syrup. You try again. This time fig and date mash rolled into a ball coated in sesame and chopped nuts and flash roasted over open flame. It crackles, it glistens, it holds. You bite. He bites. Silence. Then too chewy, you both say in unison. Back to the drawing board. Historians still argue, Dionysus mutters, holding a piece of scorched barley bread, whether great food is born or forged in fire. Or trial and error, you add, scraping burnt crumbs off your tunic. Progress, however, is being made. You begin combining textures: soft fig with crisp spelt chips, tart pomegranate with sweet almond fragrant coriander, with mellow goat cheese. The god's energy sharpens. The experiments become tighter, more focused. There's even a breakthrough, a honey and nut bar using sesame, pistachio, fig, and the dusting of wild thyme. It's crispy on the outside, soft in the center, and lingers just long enough on the tongue to distract from a tragic death monologue. You call it Act 2 delight. Dionysus cries a little. It's beautiful, he whispers, but not perfect. The final trial is daring. A layered cube base of spiced barley, a heart of wine-soaked fig paste, and a top shell of crackled sesame honey bark, all dusted with powdered citrus rind and balanced on a miniature olive leaf. You both stare at it. It seems intentional, like a snack with a backstory. You eat it in silence. Now that he says softly could pause a tragedy. You don't smile, you don't speak, you just begin plating 6 more. Outside, the light shifts. Either it's sunrise again or theater time. Dionysus claps his hands. Prep the trays. We're debuting at intermission. You groan. I need a nap. He hands you a roasted date. There's no sleeping in gastronomy. You sigh, pop the date into your mouth, and drag yourself toward destiny. The stage awaits. By the time you reach the amphitheater, your arms are trembling under the weight of an overfilled platter of divine snacks. Dionysus walks beside you in full regalia, grapevines in his hair, wine stains like medals across his tunic, and an unshakable smirk of culinary pride. This he proclaims, gesturing to the stone seats packed with impatient festival goers, is our audience. hungry not only for drama but for depth of flavor. You nod, half-dazed from lack of sleep and too many test bites. The aroma wafting from your platter honey, roasted nuts, a hint of toasted barley gently follows like an aromatic fog. As you move through the crowd, heads begin to turn. Some sniff the air. Others lean forward curious. The play is midway through the second act. On stage, a cloaked figure is cursing the gods for stealing his sheep. Classic tragedy stuff. No one is really paying attention though, because the scent of your sesame honey wine fig bars is doing numbers on the crowd's focus. Dionysus begins to hand them out, one per person, laid carefully into little folds of linen. He insists on eye contact with each recipient as though bestowing divine knowledge. The crowd eats, slowly. Then again, more quickly. A woman gasps. A child drops his wooden flute. A Spartan mutters, "By Ares' beard." One old man just whispers, "Balance." You perch on the edge of a stone bench, letting the play wash over you, some actor on stage yelling about betrayal and sheep again, while watching people nibble and chew and close their eyes like they've just heard the first good song in a decade. Dionysus leans back, beaming. This is the intermission experience we've been robbed of for centuries. You raise an eyebrow, because no one ever served a goat cheese fig wine sesame square. He points, because they never understood what it could be. Meanwhile, on stage, the actors are getting annoyed. The crowd is distracted, murmuring about that soft crunch and aftertaste of pomegranate memory. One actor forgets his line, loses his rhythm, and ends up yelling, "Who took my olives?" The audience doesn't notice. They're all staring at Dionysus, mouths full. One woman tries to clap, remembers she's holding a sticky bar, and just nods solemnly instead. Then a man licks his fingers and audibly sighs with satisfaction. It's done. You've hijacked a play with a snack. Dionysus doesn't seem concerned. Art feeds art, he murmurs, sipping wine from a cracked chalice. We elevated their tragedy with flavor. That's the point. You feel a tap on your shoulder. It's a priest, very official looking, mostly bald, except for a crescent of white fluff. He clears his throat. "Excuse me," he says sternly, but theater protocol clearly states that. Dionysus sticks a honey-glazed snack cube into the man's hand. He stares at it, stares at you, takes a bite. Pause. He walks away in silence. Works every time, Dionysus says smugly. But trouble brews. One actor tries to reclaim attention by flinging his staff down and improvising a monologue about forbidden snacks and emotional hunger. It's not subtle. Another attempts to upstage the food by dramatically collapsing in slow motion. Still no reaction. Then the real chaos begins. A pomegranate seed, sticky round, ambitious, flies through the air, thrown by someone in the upper tiers. It lands with a plop on stage directly in front of the lead actor. He pauses, glares, picks it up, tastes it. A mistake. Who brought snacks into my moment, he yells, seed juice staining his tunic like stage blood. Dionysus shrugs. Artistic interpretation. What follows is a half-hearted food fight. A fig bar flies, misses a head, hits a lyre. Another snack ricochets off a stone column. People cheer but gently, because no one wants to waste the good ones. You duck instinctively and whisper, "This is spiraling." Dionysus watches the gentle chaos and hums thoughtfully. It's performance, interactive, immersive, the future of theater. You watch an actor dodge a honeyed almond roll with surprising grace and mutter. Historians still argue whether this was evolution or sabotage. Eventually, a trumpet sounds blown sideways by a startled musician, and the festival elders call for a pause. Performers retreat. A goat runs across the stage. No one knows why. And so the first ever intermission snack premiere ends not with applause, but with quiet, satisfied chewing. Dionysus stands. That he says was delicious. You're sweeping pomegranate seeds off the stone steps with a palm frond when Dionysus approaches you like he's just been nominated for an award that doesn't exist yet. People felt that he says. They tasted narrative. You arch an eyebrow. They also tasted sesame stuck in their teeth for 30 minutes. Exactly, he grins. It lingers. Just like catharsis. You've barely recovered from the intermission incident. Let's call it the Grape Act, when a quiet murmuring rises from the temple steps behind the amphitheater. You turn and there they are, a trio of diplomatic delegations strolling toward you like flavorful omens. First comes Crete, wrapped in patterned linens, bronze bangles clinking. Then Lydia, fragrant with exotic spices and wearing more eyeliner than a tragic chorus. And finally a crew from Thrace whose clothes are fur-lined and whose expressions suggest they have opinions about this snack situation. Dionysus leans over. Ambassadors, he whispers, they've come to contribute. You groan or criticize. The Cretan representative steps forward and offers a small ceramic tray. On it, cubes of dried goat cheese wrapped in fig leaves and drizzled with thyme-infused olive oil. You try one. It's earthy, briny, and faintly sweet, a bit chewy like memory foam for your mouth. Dionysus considers it, nods, and mutters Cretan minimalism. Next, Lydia presents a honeyed pistachio tartlet topped with crushed dried rose petals and a dab of saffron cream. You inhale. It smells like a summer wedding and diplomacy at the same time. The taste glorious. The texture flaky, decadent, almost unfair. Dionysus blinks. Did they invent luxury? You glance at the Lydian ambassador. She winks. You suddenly feel underdressed. Then Thrace steps up. No tray, just a leather-wrapped pouch. The ambassador opens it with solemn ceremony and reveals jerky, fruit jerky. Layers of pressed plum, apricot, and walnut rolled into a spiral and tied with a string made of dried grapevine. You chew! It's tough, but not bad, smoky, real, like it could survive a winter and a war. Dionysus gnaws thoughtfully. That's not a snack, that's a survival strategy. The Thracian nods deadpan. Historians still argue, you mutter, whether Thracians were culinary minimalists or just aggressively practical. Now things get diplomatic. The Cretan offers olive oil to drizzle on the Thracian jerky. The Thracian declines, but allows a crumble of Lydian pistachio. Lydia observes with passive-aggressive elegance, and everyone pretends nothing is tense. Dionysus naturally makes it worse. This, he says, is beautiful. A convergence of flavor, function, and finesse. He claps loudly, startling a pigeon. I propose, he says grandly, a shared creation. A snack treaty. One final product crafted by all, approved by me. You immediately regret not leaving during the grape-tossing intermission. The negotiations begin. Crete insists on fig leaf wrapping. Lydia demands saffron. Thrace wants it dried hard and suitable for horseback. Dionysus wants sensual mouthfeel and a crunch that evokes emotional decay. You step in with a suggestion, a layered bite. Base thin, dried fruit leather, Thrace style. Center spice, nut and honey paste, Lydian style. Outer wrap, soft fig leaf, brushed with olive oil, Cretan style. Pressed flat, cut small, drizzled lightly. The delegations pause, think nod. Dionysus claps again. We're back in business. A makeshift assembly line forms on the steps. Figs are steamed, nuts crushed. Spices ground by a Lydian mortar that might double as a weapon. You oversee quality control, trying to keep the layers aligned, while Dionysus walks up and down the line, giving artistic notes like make it whisper, not shout, and more longing, less goat. Eventually the product is ready. It's odd-looking, a bit leathery, a bit oily, but aromatic, mysterious, like a scroll you shouldn't read but do. The ambassadors each take a bite. Chewing, silence. Then Cretan interesting. Lydian texturally brave. Thracian could use more jaw. Dionysus beams. Diplomatic consensus achieved. You call it the accord bite. He insists on calling it symphony in fig minor. Either way, it joins the snack lineup. And as the sun sets again, somehow the gods and mortals alike gather on the theater hill, chewing in quiet appreciation of what diplomacy can taste like. Night settles over the hills like a velvet curtain, and for once, things are calm. No lyre mishaps, no airborne olives, and no satyrs trying to ferment pine cones in your cooking jars. Just stars overhead, the glow of fading torchlight, and the quiet clink of pottery as Dionysus and his new snack council plate the next round of experimental bites. The play resumes something about hubris goats and a tragic haircut. But all eyes keep drifting to your tent, where strange and wonderful smells float through the air. The actors give it their best, but it's hard to compete with saffron honey nut paste wrapped in a fig leaf and whispering emotional closure to every bite. As you're wiping fig resin off your fingers for the 17th time, Dionysus sighs dramatically and says, "We need a name, a brand, something worthy of the gods." And the bored mortals who still think boiled lentils are a snack. You blink at him. "You mean like a label?" "Yes," he grins. "A name that transcends generations. A name whispered across amphitheaters and bathhouses alike. A name that makes people hungry just hearing it." You think for a moment, then suggest, "How about intermission delights?" He considers. Too civil. "What about Dionysus snacks?" He squints. Too modern. Silenus stumbles in with a goat under one arm and offers, "What about just yes, please?" Everyone ignores him. A group of mortal students pass by and beg to sample the goods. Dionysus hands out a few accord bites, then asks what they'd call it. One says Tears of the Muses. Another suggests drama bites. A third with date paste on his chin murmurs snackrifice. You all stare at him. He shrugs. Dionysus bursts out laughing. "We have a winner snackrifice. Glorious. The name alone tastes like rebellion." And just like that, it sticks. As you prepare the next batch of snackrifice TM, a curious procession approaches the tent. The head of the festival guild, a woman named Clymene, stands at the front, arms crossed, flanked by two scribes and what appears to be a large scroll of complaints. She clears her throat. "We have questions," she says, "about this unauthorized culinary diversion from the dramatic arts." Dionysus flashes a smile. "Have a sample." She tries one. The scribes try two. By the third bite, the scroll has been used as a napkin. "We may be open to further collaboration," she murmurs, licking honey from her thumb. "Historians still argue," Dionysus whispers to you, "whether politics was born from war or from shared snacks." You just nod and hand her a fig-stuffed almond wedge. Later that evening, you host an impromptu tasting table. Trays of snackrifice, TM, sit alongside earlier favorites. Act 2 delights whispering feta rolls, the ill-fated but still beloved pomegranate crunch surprise, which still crunches more than it surprises if you're honest. Word spreads. Even the chorus line sneaks away between scenes for a bite. One actor dramatically pretends to faint on stage just so he can roll off and nab a fig bar mid-performance. The audience applauds the improvisation. He bows with his mouth full. Then Dionysus' eyes gleaming unveils his newest concept, paired snacks. Each act, he explains, should have its own edible mood. Light for comedy, dense for tragedy, nutty for revenge. You nod slowly. "So, a menu of emotions." "Exactly," he shouts, frightening a nearby pigeon. And so you help him map it out. Act 1, spiced almond wafer with citrus zest, curiosity, and hope. Act 2, honeyed barley disc with a soft goat cheese, center revelation and betrayal. Act 3, date pomegranate chew with chili flake, edge rage and closure. Finale, lotus root crisp dipped in wine syrup, acceptance and stickiness. A group of students nearby weep softly into their barley discs. You watch the night deepen. The stars blink down like sleepy witnesses. Someone begins humming. You lean back against a wine barrel and smile, sticky-fingered and exhausted. Snackrifice TM is real. The gods are fed. The people are soothed. And somewhere in the amphitheater shadows, a playwright scribbles a new play, The Snack That Ruined Tragedy. The crowd trickles out slowly now, bellies full and theater hearts satisfied. You're packing up what's left of the snack trays when Dionysus leans on a column and says, "We've changed the game, you know." You sigh, popping the last of the Act 3 spicy pomegranate chews into your mouth. "We also started a food fight and accidentally turned the chorus into snack influencers." He smiles. "Art. But the god isn't done innovating. I've had a vision," he whispers, as if the idea is too sacred to say louder. "What if we took this to the people?" You blink. "Isn't that what we just did?" "No," he says, eyes gleaming. "Beyond Athens, beyond Greece, we take the flavor on tour." You stare at him. "A traveling snack cart." He claps. "Yes, a chariot of culinary awakening. Every village, every police, every dusty temple festival. They shall all taste the snackrifice." You imagine it. A two-wheeled cart pulled by questionable goats, packed with jars of fig paste, slabs of honey nut bars, a rattling side crate of fermented sesame spread. Dionysus in a velvet toga shouting flavor poetry at villagers. You following behind with a clipboard and deep regrets. It's plausible. Before you can object, someone else approaches. It's a playwright, the same one who faked a faint to steal a bar earlier. He looks sheepish, holding a scroll and a fig-stained linen scrap. I rewrote the third act, he mumbles, to include a snack prophecy. Dionysus tears up. You honor the art. Also, the playwright adds, I'd like to commission a custom snack to pair with my upcoming comedy. You stare. You want us to cater. The playwright nods. Nothing too chewy. My actors don't enunciate well. So it begins. The snackorium becomes a creative lab again. This time for a light, whimsical treat. Barley flour crisps, shaped like amphorae dusted with citrus sugar and crushed coriander. They taste like punchlines. You test a few batches on local philosophers. One of them mutters, it's like biting into a metaphor. Another says, I feel called out by the texture. Both ask for seconds. Soon requests pour in. A tragedy about divine vengeance wants dark layered flavor, minimal sweetness. A historical epic demands crunch that echoes down the marble halls of destiny. Even a children's puppet show submits a request, something soft but fun, like a marshmallow with ideas. You start a chalkboard wall in the back of the tent. Snack orders and mood pairings. Sweet regret, cinnamon fig roll with salted almond core. Olive you to death. Brined olive crackers dipped in thyme honey. The feta awakens, airy pastry with goat cheese and lemon zest. You won't baklava me again, working title under revision. Even Silenus joins in. He presents a new beverage pairing list, mostly wine-based. One includes melted honey and wild mint, served in a terracotta cup he calls the cup of poor decisions. You keep adding to the menu. The audience now expects snacks at intermission. The actors demand samples backstage. Vendors start selling bootleg versions from carts with slogans like "Get figgy with it" and official-ish snackrifice. Dionysus is torn between outrage and pride. Do I smite them or franchise them, he muses aloud. Historians still argue, you say, whether the gods invented branding or just got really lucky. And just when you think you've seen it all, snack poetry readings, taste-based voting systems for new scripts, a group of oracles requesting vision-inducing trail mix, Dionysus unveils his final stage of the plan. He wants to immortalize the snack. I'm commissioning a statue, he declares. Marble, life-sized, one arm offering the snackrifice, the other reaching toward a fallen olive. You sigh. And where exactly would this masterpiece go? He smiles. Every temple, every theater, every dining room that dares serve only bread. A goat bleats in approval. And so your life becomes half food artisan, half logistical manager of a mythically scalable snack empire. Which honestly beats barley porridge. If you thought divine snack making would taper off once Dionysus got his statue idea, you were tragically mistaken. Because now he wants feedback forms. I need to know what moves them, he insists, waving a fistful of linen slips covered in scribbled drawings and mysterious stains. Does the sesame hit before the sorrow? Do they taste the betrayal in Act 2? You blink. You want snack reviews. Emotional snack reviews, he says with a twirl. I need adjectives, mood reactions, preferably in verse. So you set up a feedback amphora, an actual ceramic vessel, outside the snackorium with a sign that says, tell us your feelings or your flavors. Beneath it, a stack of fig leaf papers and sharpened styluses made from gently used satyr flute reeds. You expect chaos. What you get is poetry. People write haikus about the honey glaze. One anonymous submission simply says, chewy, haunting, like my ex. A child draws a goat crying into a sesame bar. Someone even writes an epic in dactylic hexameter ending with, and thus the almond did restore my faith. Dionysus weeps. They get it, he whispers. But not all feedback is gold. One critic claims the fig paste is too introspective. Another writes, made me feel like my parents never approved of my career. That may not be about the snack. And someone simply wrote olive bat 47 times. Still, Dionysus is thrilled. He builds a mural from the best reviews and has a Maenad read them aloud at sunset like bedtime stories for the culinary ambitious. Meanwhile, you're refining production. The fig and wine ratio gets tighter. You find a better way to toast sesame over a curved bronze shield that used to be a prop. You even invent a cooling method using chilled amphorae buried in sand. One day you catch Dionysus whispering to the snack trays before service. "Sing for them," he says. "Soothe their sorrow." You choose not to ask. Just when things feel stable, though, a letter arrives. Sealed with red wax and smelling faintly of ambrosia, it bears the mark of Mount Olympus. Dionysus rips it open, reads, raises an eyebrow. Apparently he mutters the other gods have heard. "You freeze! Heard what?" "About the snack." You gulp. "We've been summoned." Before you can list all the reasons this is a horrible idea, he's already packing. 2 baskets of snackrifice TM. A scroll of flavor pairings, 1 marble carving of a sesame bar he insists is a prototype. You ask, what exactly does one serve at a divine tasting panel? Dionysus replies something unforgettable. And so you prepare a new batch, the best yet, delicately layered with fig citrus almond, a hint of pomegranate bitters, and a surprise crunch puffed grain glazed in honey and wine. Every texture carefully balanced, every aroma soft but haunting. Silenus insists on naming it the snack eternal. You go with it. You leave just before dawn, chariot-packed flavors ready, prayers offered. As the city disappears behind you and Olympus shimmers ahead, you feel the strange weight of history, sticky sweet and sesame-scented. Historians still argue Dionysus' muses reins in hand whether this was a cultural revolution or just lunch. You adjust your tunic and whisper maybe both. Mount Olympus does not disappoint. You arrive in style, by which we mean an ox cart that Dionysus insisted be retrofitted with bronze wheel covers, cedarwood paneling, and a woven canopy that spells out snackrifice in embroidered grapes. It creaks, it wobbles, it smells incredible. At the gates, Hermes greets you with a raised brow. You brought food. Dionysus steps down regal in his grape-stained finery. I brought feeling. Hermes sighs, steps aside, and mumbles something about another product launch. Inside Olympus proper, things are somehow even more chaotic than Athens during festival season. Gods lounge on clouds. Nymphs rehearse wind chimes. There's a lightning bolt polishing station and a celestial goat with glittery hooves. But all eyes turn to the basket Dionysus carries like it contains Zeus's taxes. Zeus himself waits on the throne of polished marble, his beard very thunderous. Hera is beside him, already unimpressed. Apollo tunes a lyre. Artemis polishes an arrow and glares at a pastry. "You have the floor," Zeus announces with a voice like distant thunder and indigestion. Dionysus steps forward. You trail behind, platter in hand, trying not to sweat honey. "My fellow Eternals," Dionysus says dramatically, "I present not just food, but experience. The bridge between the dramatic and the digestible. The edible elegy. The snacks," mutters Ares. Dionysus blinks, yes, but transcendent snacks. He unveils the star of the show, the snack eternal, layered fig and almond paste, pomegranate drizzle, puffed barley crunch, and a whisper of lemon thyme. Perfectly portioned, delicately stacked and arranged on a fig leaf that you spritzed with rose water like a nervous wedding planner. The gods lean in. You hand out samples like sacred offerings. One to Hera, who sniffs it like it might contain betrayal. One to Apollo, who bites with operatic flair. One to Demeter, who snatches 3 and mutters, "Finally someone's using grain properly." Zeus takes a bite. The heavens pause. Somewhere a harp hits a wrong note. He chews, thoughtfully, slowly, and then nods. "It crunches," he declares. Dionysus beams. Emotionally, texturally, Zeus corrects. "Still, it's a win." You hand out more. Poseidon dips his in salt water. You say nothing. Athena asks for a detailed ingredient list and a mythological metaphor to pair with each layer. Even Hestia, goddess of the hearth, eats hers in contemplative silence before saying, "It's warm." Aphrodite takes one bite and murmurs, "I'd marry this." Hephaestus burns his tongue. You add an ice pairing to the notes. Then comes Hades. He strolls in late, of course, trailing mist and dramatic pauses. He takes a snack eternal. He eats it. He says nothing. Dionysus gulps. Then Hades grins. "Tastes like memory and regret. I'll allow it." The gods nod in approval, some go back for seconds. Apollo composes a haiku, Hermes steals 3 for later and winks. Ares complains that it's not spicy enough, so you promise to test a version with chili-dusted dates and crushed coriander. He grunts. Acceptable. Historians still argue Dionysus whispers to you whether this was Olympus's greatest culinary moment or its weirdest potluck. Either way, it's done. You're invited to leave before things get weird, which given the company seems generous. You ride back in silence, basking in the glow of divine approval and fig glaze. By the time you descend to mortal lands, the sky is blushing dawn. Dionysus leans back and the cart hangs behind his head. So, we've conquered Olympus. You nod. He looks at you, eyes twinkling. Now we franchise. Franchising a divine snack is, as it turns out, both easier and infinitely harder than you'd think. Easier, because once word gets out that Olympus itself approved of Snacrifice TM, people are practically lining up to slap your sesame sticky logo on everything from olive carts to traveling puppet shows. Harder because you quickly discover that no one can remember the original recipe, least of all Dionysus. "We used pomegranate, right?" he asks, one morning while trying to zest a fig. You blink. "You mean lemon." Oh, he shrugs. "Flavor is a suggestion." So begins the great standardization. You commandeer the temple storeroom. Dionysus declares it the sacred inventory. You hang baskets of dried figs, line up tiny amphorae of wine and honey, and draw obsessive diagrams of snack layer order. Silenus adds illustrations. Most are unhelpful. Then come the mortals, eager entrepreneurs, traveling bards with performance platters, a Macedonian warlord with a dream of snack distribution logistics. Each wants their own variation, something regional, something spicy, something with less goat. You create a training scroll, Snacrifice, TM, Assembly, Protocol, V7.2. Step 1. Soften figs under divine blessing or warm olive oil. Step 2. Mix nut paste until emotionally satisfying. Step 3. Apply sesame only when confident. Step 4. Serve with a theatrical pause. Some follow it, most improvise. One baker replaces pomegranate syrup with beetroot jam. For color, she says. It tastes like battlefield regret. Dionysus calls it bold. You host a training symposium, really just a picnic with a lot of note-taking. Bakers from Thrace, Attica, Ionia, and beyond gather around the fire, swapping recipes and spilling sesame on their tunics. It's a mess. It's a miracle. By nightfall, they've created olive sonata, a savory take with crushed green olives and a drizzle of vinegar syrup. Syracuse surprise, fig paste laced with citrus zest and a dusting of mint ash. The Spartan chew. Impossibly dry bitter but somehow addictive. Possibly a form of punishment. Dionysus samples each one like a judge at a divine bake-off. This one sings, he murmurs, licking syrup off his fingers. That one mumbles. One baker nervously presents her creation, a soft floral number with date rose compote and a whisper of sea salt. She calls it Tragedy's Kiss. You bite in, pause. Your entire life flashes before your eyes. Even Dionysus goes quiet. "Perfect," he says. She faints. You hire her immediately. Soon stands begin popping up across the region. Pop-up kitchens at poetry readings, snack carts at weddings, amphora-themed food stalls outside temples. The branding varies. Some call it sacred bites, others the fig that was promised. All of them carry the same DNA, soft center, thoughtful crunch flavors layered like storytelling. Some overdo it. One startup adds gold flakes and markets their version as Elysium morsels. Dionysus rolls his eyes. They're gonna charge extra for the napkins. You try to monitor quality, but the demand is overwhelming. Luckily, the product resists mediocrity. Poor imitations don't stick literally. The fig paste slides right off the barley layer if made without intention. It's a built-in defense mechanism. You even host a symposium, Snackposium, where bakers, bards, and minor gods gather to debate fig texture over wine spritzers. It ends with a chorus rendition of Ode to Almond Dust and 3 new variants, one spicy, one sour, and one somehow crunchy and philosophical. Historians still argue Dionysus tells a reporter from the Oracle Daily Scroll whether this was the rise of a food empire or just me being extremely correct. You now surrounded by fig crates nod tiredly. And then comes the merch. Fig-scented oil lamps, honey barley bath scrubs, a play called Snackrifice the Musical featuring a dancing almond in Act 2. Even Hades sends word. My underworld staff request a recipe. They're bored of pomegranate. You send a batch. Within weeks, Athens is a snacking capital. People quote flavor notes like oracles. Even Plato gets in on it. Writes a paragraph about ideal forms of chewiness. You think he's joking. He's not. And as the sun sets behind your now thriving tent and the air hums with the scent of toasted sesame, Dionysus clinks amphore with you and grins. You know what this means, he asks. No, he raises his eyebrows. Snack sequel. Of course there's a sequel. With Snackrifice TM now embedded in every amphitheater bathhouse and lyre rehearsal picnic from Athens to Alexandria, Dionysus has grown restless. He watches the snack carts roll by like a benevolent king surveying his sesame-flavored kingdom and then sighs dramatically into a goblet of beet-infused wine. I crave evolution, he says, reclining on a pillow shaped like a pomegranate. The soul must snack forward. You stare elbow deep in a vat of fig paste. Can we not just enjoy our success for a minute? But no, Dionysus wants innovation, which is how you end up in a clearing somewhere near Delphi, surrounded by pine smoke singing cicadas and a dozen flavor consultants including the goat, again. Your mission: create the next iconic snack. I'm thinking Dionysus muses layers of mystery. Something that starts sweet then turns introspective. You blink, like an edible plot twist. He gasps. Exactly. You workshop ideas. A hollow barley sphere that cracks open to reveal spice not missed, ambitious, also dangerous. A dual-layer cookie, 1/2 sour date, 1/2 honey almond called the argument. A dissolvable powder snack you swirl in wine. Silenus suggests calling it drinkable sadness. Silenus also proposes a wine-flavored gum that doubles as a lie detector. That one gets quietly discarded. The brainstorming is chaotic. One nymph insists everything must sparkle. A young satyr invents something called a crunch poem. It's just toasted scrolls dipped in syrup. You pretend to take notes. Then someone accidentally burns a batch of fig almond bars. The edges blacken. The inside turns gooey. You're about to toss them when Dionysus stops you mid-scrape. Wait, what's this? You try a bite. Smoky, sweet, charred, weirdly emotional. He takes one. Chews more, stares at the sky. It tastes, he says slowly, like consequences. You blink. That's not bad. He calls it ash of the chorus. You roll your eyes, but people love it. Especially playwrights. One says it tastes like the third act of life. You don't know what that means. As Snackrifice TM lives on in all its variants, this new line Dark Bites emerges. Less sweet, more mysterious. Hints of burnt herbs, a crunch that lingers like unresolved conflict. It's the anti-snack, the brooding cousin, the emotional snack arc. Historians still argue Dionysus tells a bored turtle one morning whether we invented a new genre or just ran out of figs. Either way, the legend grows. Soon, Snackrifice is recited in school poetry contests. Children trade crumbled bites at recess. A temple in Corinth builds a fig-shaped shrine. One festival stages a reenactment of the first bake-off, complete with edible set pieces and a goat playing you. You choose not to attend, and yet it's peaceful. You finally step back. The operation runs itself now. Bards write songs about sesame. Actors refuse to perform without their pre-scene pomegranate chews. Even the goats are unionized. You sit by the sea one evening watching the sun soften over the olive trees. Your satchel still smells faintly of honey and thyme. And Dionysus? He's asleep in a hammock, snoring softly, holding a half-eaten snack eternal in one hand. The world spins, people snack, and for once nothing burns. And so, with a full belly, sore feet, and maybe a dash of existential pride, you settle into the slow golden hum of myth becoming memory. Wind down 300 words. The sky above fades gently now, the stars beginning to blink awake, soft and sleepy. You sit a little straighter, taking in the quiet that always follows a story well told and a snack well shared. The night air carries traces of fig and firewood, honey and herbs. A gentle wind stirs the olive branches, and somewhere a lyre strums one final note. The amphitheater lies still. The actors have gone. The audience, fed and fulfilled, has wandered home with honey-sticky fingers and sesame on their breath. Even the goats have curled up in the warm straw, dreaming of fame. You take one last bite of the final bar, slightly crisped, perfectly layered, and let it melt slowly on your tongue. It doesn't demand anything. It doesn't shout for attention. It just is a small, quiet harmony of time and taste. Your eyes grow heavier. The stars blink slower. The stories settle like soft folds of linen. Beneath it all is a hum, not of crowds or chaos, but of comfort. A memory baked in barley and bound with sweetness. A moment stretched long like syrup over stone. You lean back. The earth holds you. The story is done. Sleep finds you now not with thunder or drama, but with the soft, satisfied sigh of someone who tasted something simple and knew it mattered.